just to make a point, Maria is our representative from, one of the things we asked was a representative to you for the board. Maria does go to the meetings, she tells us about them, and I believe there's someone for council information who also
I'm here at the Conservancy Act tonight, and we also have Gwen Evans and John Van. I'm Sarah Nielson. I'm the director of the Conservancy. I'm also the administrator of Washington. Countless times by now. So I thought what I'd do is just sort of a rundown on what's been going on with the Conservancy since the last visit in March, and if there's questions, Gwen, John, and I can as I mentioned in the spring, the items that we were able to fund, we as a Conservancy were able to fund in the park were two maintenance positions. It was the late night park department workers who were there to be supplemental into a later evening, so they stayed till 10:30. And they started in May and they just finished last week, so it was 6 months of that. And that really helped to minimize the late night trash pileup, as well as then when the morning staff came in, they can kind of get a better jump start on the day without having as much of that to work. And we do believe that that has really going to help the pest problem, that has, you know what I mean. So the Conservancy also funded a playground associate again this year. That was something a repeat that was there last year. That was a recreation department employee who was at the big playground 5 days a week from 10 to 6. A great guy named Terrence Dixon, who's well loved by kids and parents and everyone. Crafts, projects, activities, kids, games. And for me, in my other hat, it's really helpful to know there's an adult that's just sat in the playground all the time, all 5 days a week. So the Conservancy was able to fund that as well this year. You may have noticed when you came in the corner beds and the parterre, those main decorative gardens in the summer, they were really robust, cheerful, fun plantings that were there, and those were the design for that, and the plants themselves were provided by the Conservancy. As well as a seasonal gardener who has been with the park fixed post, as we call it, at Washington Square for 6 months, maintaining the planting beds, maintaining, helping the existing gardener who, as you know, has all of District 2 as her area. So he's been there supplemental, and I think that's made a nice difference in working on that. So all of that that I just described comes to just under $90,000, and so that's the Conservancy investment in the park for 2014. And so there was also a lot of volunteer events. There were 2 that were partnerships with the Parks Department as far as It's My Park Day, which is sort of a volunteer outreach event that the Parks Department runs with the neighborhood groups. I'm sure some of the other Salvio and some of the groups also do that. So it's May and October. Then we had an event in July, September, and then we're in the process of doing 2 more events to plant bulbs right now. So we did one a week ago, and we have another one coming up in another week, so lots more bulbs to go around. In April, there was our first fundraising event that was held. It was at a restaurant on 9th Street in Mars, a wine tasting. Really nice event. We had about 200 people come. And we plan to continue that tradition of sort of off-site event. Excuse me? That one netted about 40,000. So yeah, a lot of it from people who actually just made donations who couldn't come. They were entertaining us. So that's good. So as far as what the Conservancy is going into the winter, we're going to do an annual appeal, a Christmas fundraising letter. I'm drafting that right now, which is basically what I just told you what we were able to fund this year. And then the goal is to sort of just continue with community outreach, trying to get the word out that the Conservancy exists, reach out to block associations, co-op boards, just sort of help get the word out a little bit more. And then try to figure out what the possibilities are for funding for next year. It's kind of a balance because the goal is to maintain what we were able to fund this year, but we don't know how much money we have yet, and so conversation with park staff as far as what worked, maintenance-wise, what we'd like to do again, and then assuming that the annual appeal yields what we hope it will, then we'd be able to expand, hopefully a little bit, what we were able to fund this year. So maybe add a 7th month for the maintenance, or extend the gardener, or do something additional. So that will sort of be determined going forward. But we felt pretty comfortable with what we were able to provide this year so far. And that's pretty much the update that I have for you. So that's what's happened since March and going into the winter. So we can come back in the spring with what kind of how it's all washed out a little bit. Before I take your question, sir, we had talked about trying to do a conservancy update and then talk about park stuff later. So I don't know which kind of question you had, but if there were questions from the committee first.
Committee first, anything having to do with conservancy, please, yes, let's start with
The 90,000, is that the total of what has been raised so far?
No, we raised a little bit more than that. That's the total that's either been paid or pledged to the Parks Department.
So what has been raised so far?
It's 184,000.
And what would be the goal for that?
Oh, the
that
oh, that's a good question. I think, go up a little bit each year. We're kind of figuring out what the next steps would be. I think the one goal for next year would be a full-time gardener who's just fixed at Washington Square. I think the examples that just came from Jackson as far as the benefit of having a gardener there all the time, especially with the planning effects of having someone able to make long-term plans. Our existing gardener does quite a bit of that, but to be able to kind of add another layer that's just focused on our 10 acres would make a big difference. So I don't know if we have a goal for now. I think for next year, being able to go up 10, 15, 20%. Is that a good way to think of it? From there. So it's such a new group, we're sort of figuring out a lot of those things.
Okay, so you spent 90,000,
Yeah.
raised 184,000, so that leaves 94,000. And so what's happening?
That was what went into the park. There were some other expenditures, and we hired the graphic designer. What else did we do?
We had some, I think there are two things that account for there being some extra money in there. One is our benefit, as Sarah described, was more successful than we expected it to be. And then the other is we had obviously some startup costs. We're only in our second year of being an entity. And I think one of the other things, and Coral talked about it last time, that when you have a 501c3 and you're just starting up, you don't really know until you're seasoned a little bit exactly how your money is going to come in. And so the fact that we raised that amount of money in the first year, we don't know if we're going to raise that amount of money in the second year. So we're trying to be a little bit, we're trying to be conservative in how we think about spending the money. We don't want to start a program that we can continue the next year.
You talked about the PEP officers and that they were staying to around 10:30 in the evening.
No, maintenance workers.
That was maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, did you have asked for, I know I specifically did a year ago, talk about PEP officers there in the evening, particularly over the summer months. That wasn't the plan?
That is the plan. That has not yet happened yet.
That hasn't happened?
Yeah, that is something that the Parks Department is handling, so my other hat. And that's through Village Alliance funds and NYU funds. And can I digress into this, or should we finish all conservancy questions?
I think it's important to note, I read.
You know, I thought it was.
That's important to note,
Yeah.
because I did too, but when
Yeah.
when I was writing the notes, and then she said it again, it was maintenance people for the 6 months in.
But
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But
Well, one of the problems was it was in the news a lot over the summer months about the banking, and I spoke to you directly about it early on in the summer to make sure that maybe it was, you said maintenance, and I thought it was security, but either way, that was a problem. And the banking, the drugs that they amplified given. And as a matter of fact.
The Conservancy's done nothing to address that at that point.
Yeah, well, why don't that? Because it's horrible.
So the Parks Department manages and operates the park. The Conservancy is a Friends of group that's supporting parks, so it's complicated in a situation like this because I also work for the Parks Department, so I can address that question, but if I can just ask you to, we'll finish all the Conservancy stuff, then I'll switch hats and then we can talk about PEP. Is that okay? I know that's weird.
Is it coming next month?
Yeah, and then next month I was gonna do a big extravaganza update on all the parks things.
And I have another question that is conservancy.
Yeah.
I think it also, the
Well,
first
let me just,
conservancy
sir,
question.
just a second. So, sir, you're saying you'd really like it if the Conservancy could help address this issue?
Absolutely.
Or you want someone to address the
You
issue?
talking to me?
Yeah, I'm just.
I came here at 6:30, wanting to ask a question about the sidewalk along the south side of Washington Square, why it's a bunch of asphalt patches put together by a drunken sailor instead of a concrete grid.
Yeah,
I have the answer to that, but may I switch hats?
just answer the question because we've been here since 6.
I've been here since 6:30.
Well,
6:30, I'm sorry.
So the sidewalks are a separate contract from the park renovation. It went out to bid, they've opened for bids. They're meeting with the contractor tomorrow to talk about whether this person can do the work. It's as George mentioned in your many hours of sitting here, you've learned a lot about procurement. The contractor may or may not be the right contractor to be able to do this work, even though it's not particularly hard to do a hex paver sidewalk, but we want to make sure they can. So
What I don't understand is why Parks has jurisdiction over this. It's outside the park.
No, it's not.
No, sidewalks.
The sidewalk,
are part-
the sidewalk is part of our property.
They're part of the side, yes, yes.
Because
I thought the fence was the boundary.
you know, the curb is the boundary.
So we'll find out if this is the right contractor, then they'll be able to move forward. It'll take a few months with all the legal stuff, and then the question is whether you start in the middle of winter or whether you wait until spring. If it's not the right contractor, they'll have to figure out what the new path would be, whether trying to work with the second bidder or have to repackage it or send it out to bid again. So I don't have an answer for you yet, but we want to get it done. I agree the sidewalks are in terrible shape. So.
Well, when the city of New York does this, they don't put something out to bid. They've got, they've already got a group and they do it.
No, it goes in.
Every sidewalk goes out to bid.
But a lot of them does.
Almost all sidewalks are repaired by the property owner, respective city of New York repairs versions.
Very good.
But this time, don't hire a drunken sailor.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, did you have a comment about
I just
that?
want to clarify.
Yeah.
Sir, yes, we repair sidewalks. This is not a repair. This is a complete reconstruction of the sidewalk, which is not something that our crews are capable of doing. So it's an outside contractor who has to be hired. And we are preparing to spend, at least $1.7 million to build a brand new sidewalk around the entire perimeter of the park. Not just the south side, the entire park.
And is that part
Well,
of
the rest
phase
of the
3?
park looks, the rest of the sidewalk looks pretty good.
Well, not to us.
Is that phase 3?
No, actually.
Well, I guess maybe you can call it phase 4.
Yes, yes.
Are you going to replace the trees or the
Yes. Well, we're not, if the trees are healthy, they're not being replaced. But we, as part of this contract, that we are also planting a number of new trees.
Okay, in this sidewalk.
The trees that are empty will have trees on them, and there'll be nice tree pits eventually.
Okay.
Two quick conservative.
Oh, honey, yes.
Yeah,
Bill, yes.
two quick things. I think going back from the beginning of what we talked about, the conservancy, that there was an interest in having, and I thought it was agreed upon, to have the financial report every year, so that we just finished, the FY 2014, 2015, and now we should be in 2015, 2016, as to when we would expect that. And the other comment is that I think the ornamental flower gardens were very lovely, but the rest of the park, I just want to know, because I saw there must have been volunteers in March or April that worked so hard to clean up all those weeds that were all over the park. I mean, you can have, whether there is going to be some attention to that, or is the idea on the part of the Conservancy just to have the ornamental gardens?
Both. Definitely, I mean, the vision is both. I mean, we want some of it looking great and the rest of it looking shabby. So, yeah, the idea is to uplift the whole thing. But, yeah, it's been usage of the park, adapting to the new gardener. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of plant material there and 35,000 people a day. So it's just a lot of people come through with all their stuff.
So I played large swaths where there's just dirt, and there isn't anything. I wanted to put that was on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I have a
Please,
couple,
just reintroduce yourself.
Jose Montford, I live on Sheridan Square, and I do use the park, and I'm very happy about the outcome of the park and what they've done. Having said that, and it's a very popular park, and it's frequented by tons of people. One question that I have having to do with the Conservancy, I think, is the upkeep and maintenance of the park. Not so much of the flower beds, but the trash that accumulates. So many people using the park. Oftentimes, I see that the trash bins are just overflowing, and it just looks, it looks nasty. It seems to me that the trash is not carted away frequently enough, based on the amount of people that are using the park. So that's one question that I had. If there going to be more effort in trash collecting. And the other thing was that I remember back in the park back at the Waverly Schoolhouse, and we were told that the sidewalk was scheduled to commence in the fall. I mean, not in the winter. I'm sorry. Has there been a setback and delay about that? Because I was counting on that work,
Right.
Starting right about now.
Yeah, they, as George was describing, they finish the construction documents, and then they go through a legal review to make sure that those are ready for bid, and then they go out to bid. That's 6 weeks that has to be out in the marketplace. Then they set the bid date. So if there's any delay in getting the construction documents out, it pushes the whole thing forward. So whenever that was, at that moment, we were envisioning an earlier time. So I don't know if there was a delay in getting the bid documents ready, or if it was something with a bunch of legal questions about them. There's often jags in that process. So this is where we're at now, and it's just a really tedious process. And some of it is the Parks Department's fault, and some of it is there are a tremendous number of legally mandated gaps of time. You do this one step, and then you have to wait X number of days or months while something else happens. So it's very frustrating.
What about the trash car?
Trash problem, we're working on it. I mean, it's, like I said, 35,000 people eating food, entering the park all day long. I mean, the guys, I see them, they're just going around, picking it up, those hot summer days, all day, carrying it out. It's just a really, really high volume.
I just, one thing to just add on the trash, as Sarah said in her update at the beginning, one of the things that the Conservancy was able to fund was an extra late night maintenance shift. And so there was an extra garbage pickup at night that wouldn't have happened at all after 7 o'clock during the summer. I mean, it's not something that the city funds. Those positions would never have been funded by the city, and it only occurred because we were able to provide the money. That period is now ended, but hopefully, as we work with the city, figure out additional, what content is required for it and how to provide for that.
Just one point to that. I'm looking through the notes from the last meeting. One of the questions that kept coming up was that there's concern that with conservancies is that money they raise somehow relieves the Parks Department of its obligation to maintain parks with public funds. And the pledge was that the parks would not cut the funding to Washington Square Park. Can you discuss whether that held up?
Well, yes, because this, as Gwen has just mentioned, what the Conservancy was able to do is provide us with money for a supplemental service that we otherwise would not have had. So we're continuing to maintain the staffing levels and provide the funding that we provided to the park all along.
So if it was X before, it's X again, and this is just supplemental?
Well, it's X plus Y.
Because of the Y, but I'm saying you didn't go less than X.
No.
Okay, that was the question. Perhaps I was correct. Yes, Dave?
I thought there was some discussion about creating compactor.
Yeah, that's right. Special garbage.
And
It's something
is
that-
that a cost department expense, or is that something the Conservancy might
It
pick
would
up?
be, let's see, what I know about that, and Steve chime in if you want, I know that they did a pilot of it at Thompson Square, and also at Union, they have some.
Okay.
They work, pack the garbage. They're big, they're kind of ugly. We have a landmark park, so it would be a discussion we would come to you all to see if we were even on board with this aesthetically at all. They are expensive, and there's a month, I think it's a monthly, Steve, my there's a monthly fee that is charged as well. You get the box, and then they're incredible. Like, they send you an email when it's full.
Yeah.
Really amazing. But they're, I mean, it's substantial as far as a piece of furniture in the park. It has pluses and minuses. I know Tompkins has tried it out this year, and so I'm going to circle back with them and see if they think it's overall something they could recommend or not. They're completely rat-proof, so that's a great bonus. But I think it would be a visual impact that we would want to consider, in the park. So.
There was
But it has not been ruled out. It's something,
Right.
it's
It's
something we
kind of
should
like not
probably
even
take a
on the
look
table
at.
yet, but yeah, they're bigger than that then.
And the price is actually coming down on these things.
Yeah.
So it may be something we would want to take a look at.
They could be made to fit in.
It's a narrow
That's what
one.
we're gonna do. Yeah.
Now,
Just give them
something else.
themes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, because what's in Washington Square Park is pretty much like that, right?
Maybe the bigger, a little taller. and it has those-
But still
Yeah.
open at the top. So that's why I was asking you
No,
about
they
what's
have those
considered.
lids, like you earlier when Rich was talking about how the rats, they have those lids that go,
Yeah.
Yeah. Washington Park, yeah.
they're not always on.
Any other committee members or anything you wanted to add?
No, but some of the discussions at the board meeting were things like maybe selective pruning. Because selective pruning would allow the sun in certain areas that would be more warm than other areas. Again, these are things that, would require additional expenditures. And the concern of 501c3 is that it maintains its current contributions and donations. Parks Department plans.
Last year in the notes, or in March,
This would be
I'm sorry.
supplemental. What would be supplemental? Everything's supplemental.
I'm not sure last March, the things I wrote in the notes that you were hoped upon were maintenance crew in the evening, a seasonal gardener dedicated to the park, to help the staff provided by the park department, plant materials and maintenance equipment, organization of volunteers, and a playground associate. This would be potentially another thing, the pruning.
Yeah, so that's something that sort of seeing how things go this winter, it may be some flexibility for spring or summer.
But it seems like you're able to do much of what you hoped to.
Yeah, for this year, so, I mean, we're pleased with the outcome for this first fall season, so, and thanks for everyone's support.
Let's see if there are any other conservancy questions. Yes.
Oh, no, sorry, not conservancy, just a question of, could we add more bins to the park?
Trash bins.
Right.
I think they do add more in the busy days, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously a really great idea. I'm sure that we have some more to add, so I'll talk to them about it.
Okay.
Any other questions about the conservancy, or would you like me to go back to my notes? Oh, yes. Can you introduce yourself and tell me where you're from, please?
Catherine Swan, there at the Washington Square Park.
Would you stand up?
So I had a question for you.
I'm sorry, what organization? No, seriously, what is it? Did you form an organization?
No, I read the Washington Square Park blog.
Oh, Black, okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, didn't hear you.
But maybe I'll form an organization too. I understand that you're adding more personnel to the Conservancy, which you didn't mention. You have an ad on my idea list for a community associate?
Yeah, we've been given a grant to bring in someone who can do some community outreach. So
You
that's
didn't mention that.
She mentioned community outreach,
Yeah,
but she didn't talk about it first.
yeah, we're sort of trying to find the right candidate right now, but the idea is that it would be someone who would be able to reach out to block associations, co-op boards, and just really help get the word out because, it's just me and I'm pretty much really busy with the park itself. So, but to help really kind of pound the pavement, get the word out with businesses in the neighborhood.
Where was the grant from?
It's a foundation that's called the Manton Foundation.
When the Conservancy met with Lynn Brown and Alicia Hurley from NYU about money for the park, what was the outcome of those discussions?
They met with not sure what is the date you're referring to.
April and March of 2013, there were 6 emails between the Conservancy and Bill Castro and Elizabeth Eli talking about NYU monies and that they needed to figure out where that money was going to go.
And what I think
And
is people.
Alicia, let me just say that there were 2 meetings with Alicia Hurley and 1 meeting with Lynn Brown. So there were meetings with Alicia Hurley and Lynn Brown, higher ups at NYU, vice president, senior vice president, all involved in NYU 2031. And so these meetings happened and there were discussions, although the community board notes from that meeting in March said there was no relationship. That was
Yes, that's
inaccurate.
And
There is
actually,
a
that's still true,
relationship.
there is no relationship. I mean,
Well, you had meetings, what did you
I
discuss?
don't.
Let her answer the question. and
She's
don't
not
take over the
answering,
meeting.
she's
Don't
debating.
take over the meeting.
Which is what they're very good at.
Yeah, but a meeting does not necessarily constitute a relationship, right? I mean, there.
Oh, was that purposely worded that way so that it would?
No, I'm making a statement, I'm responding to your statement and my take on it, because I will write the notes, and when you criticize them, if you do, I'm trying to explain that perhaps a meeting is not the same as a relationship,
Okay,
okay?
but the implication was that there were no meetings.
So last time in the
Question was
notes,
never answered.
so in the
Because it
notes
was
that,
hijacked.
but in the
and Sarah
notes, the
Nielson
question was
talked-
very specific. What relationship does NYU have to the Washington Square Park Conservancy? And the answer was no relationship. So is your question, is there a relationship?
No, my question is, what did those meetings entail? What did you decide? And what was discussed? The community should know that. You can't pretend there weren't meetings. There were meetings. There are 6 emails between March and April 2013 before, well, they.
Is there
they
something,
never-
are you specifically
Which
wondering?
looking hostile to me. I mean, there have been a lot of things kept under the table, private meetings for years, before you all came before the community and you evaded, you didn't put any of your documents on the table that you had when you first,
Right.
when you came
Okay.
before the board.
Okay.
So I'm just asking, what was the discussion with NYU? What do you plan to do with that money? And what did Lynn Brown and Alicia Hurley say? And I'm addressing Gwen Evans because she and Elizabeth Eli and Sarah Nielson and these women were all involved.
I actually was not at the meeting, so
Okay.
There you go.
but to say, I think this is probably the 3rd or 4th time we've answered the question about how we've interacted with NYU.
You have
But
not
to make it
answered
very
it,
clear,
trust me.
that we have not taken any money from NYU.
But
We
what
have-
did you discuss with
Can
them?
I answer the question?
Well, you're trying to evade.
That's enough. You know, they're gonna have community outreach, they're gonna have meetings in community outreach with a local business, perhaps the deli across the street. Would you like?
Please, let her answer the question.
She
as
said
you
she wasn't
said.
at the meeting, she said she's
But
answered it 4
Elizabeth
times.
Eli probably was, or Gwen.
Again,
or-
we have not taken any money from NYU.
But what
Yeah.
did you discuss with
NYU,
them?
there is money at NYU that is designated for the park,
Mhm.
and there was there was one early discussion to which we thought to which Elizabeth Ely was at that meeting,
Mhm.
that talked about how is that money going to be spent on the park.
Mhm.
After that, we decided that we didn't want to be involved in those discussions.
Mhm.
Any monies which NYU gives to the park goes to the Parks Department,
And the parks.
and it has nothing to do with the conservancy.
That's right.
We've taken no money from NYU. We have had donations and volunteers who come from the NYU community, such
Mhm.
as alumni and employees of NYU,
Mhm.
but that's it. I don't think that constitutes a relationship with NYU.
Has anything changed since the last time you answered the question?
No.
She didn't answer the question.
Well, she
Ask and answer.
Steve, you had a comment you wanted to add to that?
No, I would just confirm what she just said, that the donation that was under discussion from NYU would be coming to the Parks Department. It would not be going to the Conservancy.
I wasn't directly, I thought it was going through an organization.
No.
Directly, it wasn't through a nonprofit.
Well, they did say the City Parks Foundation at that last meeting.
No, but the original contribution they made came to the Parks Department. I would expect that if there's another contribution, it would also be coming to the Parks Department.
But just to clarify, there was a City Parks Foundation acted as a middleman for some, what was that?
That's in your notes.
Is the remainder from the capital project.
Oh, right, that's right. So there was, yeah, explain that.
So could I just ask, why isn't that money spent? Like, because, it was painted this picture that there was no money for Washington Square Park, but meanwhile, there's this $500,000 sitting around. Why isn't that being
Because it has
spent?
not been received.
But NYU gave $1 million at the onset. In fact, it had never been mentioned that it was for maintenance, but okay, say it was. Why wouldn't it be received?
Because we didn't receive $1 million.
That was what was in like all the press and everything.
Well, we received 500,000, which went directly into the capital project.
Okay, well, that's a change in tune, honestly.
I don't know, any other questions about the Conservancy? Okay. Well, that's it, then we just have the executive committee, or the committee.
Well, I had a question about the park. I was separating the two.
Yeah, we really wanted to try to do that next month, is it?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I was just curious about these trees that keep dying around the fountain, and I had written about it a bunch, BC News had covered it, and at the time, this was like 2 or 3 years ago now, the Parks Department said they were, assessing all these things, and, obviously it's partly the design and the drainage, but it seems like it's still happening, and so nothing was really resolved, and now there's 2 more trees that are dying, which have already died like 3 times in the same location around the fountain.
So should we have them prepare a response in December?
Yeah, I mean, it would be good if it was addressed, this is for trees.
Yeah,
I'm
Oh,
aware
okay.
of the issue.
I don't know if there's an answer now, but.
Yeah, Forestry's aware of it. I mean, it might be compacted soil, it might be drainage. Or one place.
Kevin, is this something you'd like the Conservancy to perhaps, get, help fund? Yeah. Okay, so let's just, if the committee can meet, I'm sorry, yeah. Oh, yes.
I've lost my voice, so I hope you can hear me.
I think you're great.
I'm just would like to ask a question about the decreasing of the time the park is open and what the overall plan is about closing. It is the only large park. Well, it used to be open all the time, and then it went to 2 o'clock, then it went to 1 o'clock, then it went to 12 o'clock. Sometimes they close it at 11 o'clock.
Well, it's supposed to be midnight, and the police come and they pull the French barricades across the openings. Has it really been as early as 11? Because I actually get the opposite complaint quite a bit, which is that they close it later or not at all. I would be surprised if they were coming earlier. But has that happened frequently to you? Have you seen that quite a bit?
Or during the summer.
During the summer? Okay. I think that when I've spoken to them about it, the lateness, they say, I can bring it up next time.
Why is it closed so early when it's a large park that serves a community that, particularly in the summer, needs to be outside because of the heat?
Oh, you mean the standard hours? So why are the standard hours midnight?
Beyond midnight, yes, it used to be 2, it used to be 24, then it was 2, then it was 1, then it became midnight. I just wanted to know what kind of community input went into the decisions of the timing. I don't recall any time that this was a public discussion.
I don't know, does anybody remember
Well, I find it hard to believe that the park would ever have been open 24 hours a day. Maybe that's possible, but there are closing hours. There's a close, all of our parks officially close at 1 a.m. unless otherwise posted. And there must have been, as long as I've worked for the Parks Department, the closing hour for this park has been midnight. And I believe there have been discussions at the community board in the past, which basically reconfirmed the fact that people wanted it closed at midnight. But if people want something else, I guess we'll discuss it.
That's it.
But it's all, in my experience, it's midnight has been the closing hour, the official closing hour for the park.
Maybe next month we can talk about,
But no park in the city of New York is officially open past 1 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. So just committee, I just.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
I forgot to bring the flyer, but I will email it to Mr. Gormley, and hopefully he will send it around. Speaking of Waverly Recreation Center, on December 15th, we are holding an event on the rooftop with the Amateur Astronomers Association. We're going to be exploring Pluto. And so we're going to have a lecture, and then we're going to have telescopes, and we're going to be stargazing.
Steve's bringing cookies for everybody.
Santa Claus gonna land?
Excuse me?
Pluto's not a planet, and it's a planet.
I believe this is part of a campaign to revive it as a planet.
What day?
December 15th, we'll send you the flyer, and hopefully,
Adults and kids?
excuse me?
Adults and kids?
Adults will be there. We reserved an hour for them.
to the
Committee, so here's, can I say something?
I'll write up the restoration and, support about the plan, anybody have any concerns about the plan? Yeah, anybody have any concerns about